Perfect. Oh my gosh, it's so lovely to have you on. Sheena, how are you?
Hi, Zara. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you. Give me
Hmm.
just 1 second here. I will start our introduction and we can get ready.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Take your time.
okay, perfect. Okay, so, for everyone joining us and anyone watching the replay, my name is Zara Muhammad Ali. I am the ABC Yogi Manager. And with us today, I have Dr. Sheena Sood, who is an amazing human, but a writer, a yoga educator, and an academic, a sociologist, visionary thought leader, and healer. So many things that I could continue to say. But someone who is, I'd say, an authority on talking about decolonization in yoga.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and we today are going to talk about how yoga is a tool.
Yeah, I'm really excited and looking forward to the conversation. And also just so grateful for the way that you pull these events together to be able to create space for us to have discourse and dialogue. So thank you, Zara.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so grateful for this space, and we love building this community, and I'm excited to have these conversations. And I mean, I guess to just start us off, we talk about where the whole live is called Yoga is a Tool. What
Hmm.
exactly does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I love that we had this kind of idea for a theme on yoga being a tool because I say it a lot, but I don't always get the chance to explain what I think I mean. Um, and I'm going to start us off with an example and then hopefully kind of like broaden kind of what I'm saying. But I think many of the folks who maybe follow ABCD Yogi or, are part of Tejal Yoga and or follow this discourse on decolonization in yoga might already be familiar with the ways in which the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi uses yoga to enhance his public image, yeah, or to sanitize his image as kind of this authoritarian far right leader. And we've seen that through his International Day of Yoga, kind of like basically campaigning to get it accepted as an international holiday, the International Day of Yoga, through the United Nations, and it being accepted as one, and him kind of creating these spectacle events. And I would argue that Prime Minister Narendra Modi uses yoga as a tool for soft power, or he uses yoga as a tool for diplomacy. Yeah, because what him being able to pass these resolutions does is it sanitizes his image, maybe as chief minister of India during the Gujarat riots, right? Because he got elected not long after. Or sorry, he got elected in 2014, but it was up until then he had been kind of like denied a visa to come to the United States. He had been, kind of some international human rights organizations had been trying to hold him accountable for his complicity in the Gujarat riots, which murdered upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 Muslims in Ahmedabad. Um, and so I would say that in this case, yoga is being used as a tool, right, by Modi to conceal the true political practices of him as a chief minister, but also as an ethno state, right? And it's behind this image of yoga being perceived publicly as this kind of peaceful practice, right? And we've seen other examples of yoga being used as a tool. I think in November of 2023, there was a popular video that was circulated that I've talked about a little bit of now it was like in a context of a Zen Buddhist master, but I think, it's a relative of yoga, but this kind of Zen master, Nissim Amon, who was this Israeli Buddhist monk, right? Who was teaching he released a video teaching Israeli soldiers how they could use yoga and meditation to become a super fighter, right? In this case, yoga being used or meditation being used to help soldiers use like meditation and breath practices so that they can feel better about committing murder or to become sharper shooters. Yeah. And so I think these examples kind of show us that yoga can be used as a tool for someone to promote an image. Yoga can be used as a tool to help someone become better at what they think their purpose is. And while we would love to believe that um, well, we would love to believe that anyone who does yoga is using it for peace or is using it for liberation. I think these examples show us that that's not always the case. Yeah. Um, and one of the reasons I stress that yoga is a tool is because I think the public perception of yoga is that it is inherently pure or it's inherently peaceful or it's inherently liberatory and just. But I like to think of yoga as neutral. It can be used as a tool that promotes harm or division, unfortunately, and it can also be used as a tool to promote justice and liberation, right? It's not inherently one or the other. And I think allowing ourselves to kind of accept it as a tool forces us to become that much more clear when we want to use it for liberation. Um, so we've seen examples of that too, right? Yoga being used as a tool for solidarity. I think there are a number of ways that yoga practitioners use yoga as a tool to help their local communities kind of prevent burnout, to hold collective grief, to sustain themselves for activism. I like to think that the work of Yogis for Palestine, the intention of it is to use yoga as a tool to promote global solidarity with Palestinian liberation. And so we saw that with the International Day of Yoga action that Yogis for Palestine did with Bejel Yoga, right? Around trying to garner and get yoga teachers around the world to support, to use yoga as a tool for Palestinian liberation and to raise funds in solidarity with Al Jawad camp. We saw it when the children at Al Jawad camp did yoga with us alongside us that day as well. And so yeah, so I like to say that it's a neutral tool, not inherently good, not inherently bad.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so well put, and you've given some really great examples for like the ways in which yoga can be weaponized and the ways in which yoga has these liberatory potential. And this, I'm sorry if this is going off script because I didn't really prepare this question, but I am curious if how as we as individuals are practicing, how what are the ways maybe that we fall into yoga being like using yoga as a weaponization tool or using it as like something to sanitize, right, harm that's being done? And what are the ways, I think you touched a bit on it, is that we can use it in a liberatory way, but like just on an everyday kind of basis, what is the things
What are
we're
the
falling
ways,
into?
what
Yeah.
are the everyday ways in which we, like, I might see it as weaponized? Is that what I heard?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I don't know if this is like a super clear example, but I do think that like yoga exists, the way in which kind of we participate in and practice yoga and the way in which we offer it as yoga practitioners unfortunately exist within this privatized neoliberal self-care industry. And I do think that one of the ways we might, even if it's unintentional, like participate in this neoliberal logic is by maybe holding people responsible for their self-care. Um, what the onus, so like the state doesn't take care of our health anymore, right? In a privatized health industry, or prioritize the wellness of society. It puts the onus on the individual, and the individual kind of has to operate in this kind of like um gig culture, right? So we see yoga teachers kind of unintentionally having to participate in this gig culture by like, you know, participating in yoga in this self-care capitalist industry. And I think there's a way in which we somehow kind of like, by not critiquing the state, right, or by not critiquing these privatized industries that kind of co-opt yoga and use it in this commodified way on the market, I do think there are everyday ways in which we participate in it, even if we kind of, when we market, right, some of our offerings, right, that might intend towards decolonization, or might that might intend towards yoga practitioners, being able to kind of use yoga as a tool for activism, right? I think it makes sense why we do this, but I think without an understanding of how, um, in a globalized capitalist context, if we aren't critiquing like the system of capitalism that makes it to where people experience crisis, or that make it to where people experience burnout, or social injustices, then I think we end up kind of unintentionally weaponizing it. Um, yeah, so I think that's like one example. Um, I think that another example, did you ask about liberation too? Like, what are the everyday ways in which?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I do think that like one way, like ways to remedy that are, how yoga teachers make their offerings and their practices available to the communities that they want to be able to serve. Like, what kind of communities are we going into? Are we going to like, here in Philadelphia, where I live on occupied Lanai Lenape land, right? Are we trying to, go into the community centers where yoga is not offered, right? Or are we going to the studios, right? Are we offering at sliding scale? Are we creating community classes, right? How are we kind of creating these inclusive spaces, and making sure folks know that this practice is available and accessible to them? I think are ways in which we can use it in liberatory ways. Are we creating chair yoga offerings? Are we, really just trying to think through the reasons why people may not feel comfortable in a practice, and kind of just really trying to think through the hard questions of how to make it accessible.
I think that's such a beautiful answer. And kind of, if I'm mistaken, what I might also be hearing in that is I think when we think of decolonizing yoga, a lot of people think of taking away, right? Taking away from what we're doing and offering less. Or if you want to critique the capitalist system it's under, you have to do less. You can't offer things. But I think what I'm hearing you say is it's additional. What else are you doing that is offering into the community that is both serving what you need to do to survive in it and challenging this system so that this practice becomes available and more liberatory as we continue to practice it, right?
Yeah. No, I like the way that you kind of offered that. I think that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. But I would also love to kind of hear, I think you have, and like a lot of what I feel I've understood from decolonizing yoga in the last year, having these conversations with you is so much through the way you approach things. So I know you're offering with ABCD Yogi the upcoming Foundations of Decolonizing Yoga training. What yes, there is a lot of information and unpacking, right, of stuff we do in that training, but like, what is it that you really feel can offer of like what it means to embody and like really practice a decolonized version of yoga that you're going to offer through this, that you offer through this training, in your own words?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think one of the ways in which I try to really, like, I think so often within these trainings that talk about decolonization, there's an assumption that there's like a superior voice around who gets to take up space, or who's doing the authentic yoga and who's not. And I think the decolonizing yoga training that I want to offer, that I tried and strive to offer, is one where I really hope that everyone can find their place, in the work of decolonization, you know, and I think that's why I try to do things like, okay, let's call in our ancestors to this practice, or at least let's call in a memory of them, and kind of reckon with the contradictions of our ancestral legacy or our lineages that we come from, right? Let's also call in the enlightened ancestors that we think kind of embody the politic or embody kind of the values that we think are really important to us. And so I do think that like those components can really help ground us, because I think the concern I have with kind of the mainstream decolonizing yoga approaches is that, you know, when someone becomes the authentic voice, I think they get assumed to be like infallible, or as if they are outside of critique. And I think that like a training that actually invites self-criticism, that invites kind of, how can I talk about like my own ancestors, you know, not as like perfect models of decolonization, but actually as people who participated in harm and who maybe experienced harm as it relates to colonization or as it relates to casteism, right? And I think forcing people to reckon with that and using an embodied practice and using like breath to help people kind of like tend to their ancestral wounds and their kind of like the forecast of what their work can represent, allows people to kind of like see how they can authentically fit into a decolonizing yoga practice. Um, and so that's like one component. I think we get to like really interact with um like these nuanced kind of representations of the way in which yoga is used in the world, right? Where we get to kind of like look at images of yoga and really talk about, is that an example of colonized yoga? Is that an example of yoga being used for harm? Or is that an example of yoga being used for liberation? And I think really just kind of getting to put people in a space where we are forced to discuss these things, and you know, and people having different perspectives like pushes us to kind of develop for ourselves what are the ethical values that we want to ground into when we think about a decolonized yoga. And so I think those are kind of some of the things that I feel like are important for me in kind of offering this practice, or offering this framework and this foundations training. And it's been a really beautiful group each time with ABCD Yogi that we've done it. I guess this will be the third time. And so I always get really excited and look forward to the space that we share, and the ideas that people bring, especially because it is people who are around the world participating in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you spoke to some really great points there. And one thing that I really want to highlight, which I think is so fundamental to decolonization as a practice and like what it means to like imagine what is possible for all of us beyond the systems that we live in now, is that it is a conversation amongst competing or differing perspectives and voices and understandings. And like this isn't a decolonization practice where like there is one right way and the thing, and this is the leader and this is the person, this is the way. And I think you really embody that in what you're like this offering really embodies that by giving
Mhm.
people the space to have that conversation and move this like movement forward of decolonizing yoga and decolonizing like society as at large.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm always grateful for the ways you get to participate in that space too. And offer, yeah, just kind of like pull on gems that maybe you see that others take from it or others offer to it. And yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been a really great conversation. Is there anything you'd like to like add or share before we wrap up?
I can't really think of anything particular except that, I hope folks feel free and comfortable to kind of like contact you or me if they're interested. I think it's about like a 6 or 7 hour training, if I'm not mistaken, over 2 days. It's like a Saturday and Sunday. East Coast time is like 10:30 to 2, if I believe. I might be a little off on that, each day. And so we get to kind of like drop in and start the work of kind of thinking about colonization and weaponization and yoga's origins and pull our ancestors in. And then we get a night to kind of like rest on those thoughts and then to come back the next day. And so yeah, uh, I really like the format, and I hope that folks um, feel like if they want to participate, um, that they can get their questions answered, and we're around for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please reach out to us, me or Sheena or anyone here. And yeah, we thank you so much for this conversation and Sheena, always for your time, for your wisdom. So grateful, and we can't wait to do more with you through this decolonization training.
Yay! Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.